Hi, it's Megan. Welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be making some super easy summer lunches to have on hand for the busy, hungry kids for this summer. We're going to be making 3 freezer meals, like 3 freezer lunches that you can make now and freeze and keep for later. So I'll bring you down to the counter and show you what we're going to be working on today. Okay, for the mini pasties, you're going to need kind of 2 sets of ingredients, one for the filling and one for the actual dough for the crust. So for the filling, you're going to need 1.5 pounds of ground beef. I've also made these with turkey before, but the ground beef I think has the best flavor. You'll need some salt and pepper. You'll need about a small onion, maybe like 2 to 4 tablespoons of shredded onion, and then you're also going to need 2 potatoes shredded as well. So you're just basically going to mix all of those up to make the filling. And then for the dough part, you're going to need 4 sticks of butter, 4 blocks of cream cheese, 4 cups of flour. I need to refill my flour bucket, and some salt for seasoning. Okay, here's what you're going to need to make the homemade Hot Pockets. I'm going to be doing 2 different flavors. For the dough, you're going to need yeast, salt, flour, oil, and water. And then for the fillings, I'm doing a ham and cheese one. You can use like lunch meat and shredded cheese. I also have in the fridge, I have a big ham that we had for dinner that I'm probably going to chop up and use. But you are also welcome to use just like lunch meat if that's what you have on hand. And then I'm also going to make a pizza style one where we're going to use pepperoni and mozzarella cheese. But you could also add sausage or peppers or what other kind of other pizza toppings you like to have. Okay, here's what you're going to need for the chicken pillows. You're going to need 2 to 3 cups of cooked and shredded chicken. I'm just going to be pulling it from a rotisserie chicken. About 1 block of cream cheese, and then about 2 cans of crescent roll dough. You're also going to need some onion powder, garlic powder for seasonings, and then for a topping you're going to need some melted butter and some breadcrumbs. Okay, so to start out, the first thing I'm going to do is make the dough for the Hot Pockets, because that will need to rise for about an hour. Usually when I make it, I double the recipe, just because I figure if I'm going to make the mess, I might as well double it because it doesn't take that much longer to make twice as many. I'm going to give you, when I'm measuring, I'm going to give you the doubled recipe, but down in the description box, I'll make sure to link the original, just single recipe for you guys. So to start out, we're going to do 3 tablespoons of yeast and 3 cups of warm water. I'm going to let that bloom, and then I'll add the rest of the ingredients. Okay, so I have my hot water over here, but I'm going to start by adding my 3 tablespoons of yeast down to the bottom, because yeast likes to float on top of water. So I like putting it in first, so that way when I add the water in, it's not just like sitting on the top and I don't have to stir it quite as much. I'm also going to add my 3 tablespoons of oil so that the yeast has something to start eating. Usually you do that with sugar, but this recipe doesn't call for sugar for some reason. I guess I've never really paid attention to that before. Okay, so here's my 3 tablespoons of oil. And then I'm going to add in my 3 cups of warm water. So as I poured that in, it kind of started to just mix itself. So I don't need to put a spoon in there and mix it or anything. But I'm just going to wait about 5 to 10 minutes until it starts to bloom, which just means it starts to get all bubbly and foamy. And then from there, we're going to add our 8 cups of flour and our 3 tablespoons of salt. And then I will put it in my KitchenAid and mix it until a dough starts to form. Okay, while I'm waiting for that to bloom, I'm going to start working on making the filling for the little mini pasties. So that's going to be my meat, my shredded onion, and my shredded potatoes, as well as some salt and pepper. My meat is still a little bit frozen, but it should be fine. I should be able to mix it in here well enough. So something I try to do when I do these bigger cooking days is I try to get as much prep done ahead of time as I can. So this morning, before I started, I made sure to pull out like my meat so it could thaw. I pulled out my cream cheese and butter so that it could start to come to room temperature, so it's easier to work with. I also made sure the other day that I pulled out all of my recipes and kind of started to make a timeline of what things I wanted to start first, and then what things I was going to work on like in the in-between times. So let me know if you guys like this style video where I do like a big cooking day and kind of show you all of the things that I'm working on and show you like the order that I'm doing them in, or if you like like how I do a lot of my other videos, where I just do a recipe start to finish, do another recipe start to finish, because I do cook both ways. So here, just on this plate that I had my meat on, since it's all gonna be mixed together anyways, I'm just gonna shred my potatoes. I've already washed them. Something else I like to do on these bigger cooking days is I like to just have a bowl that I just pull out and throw all my trash in. If I also am doing lots of things with like veggies and fruits, I'll pull out another one for like compost and like food scraps. That way I'm not constantly walking back and forth to my trash can. And then at the end I can just toss all of that away. Okay, since I need this onion for another recipe and I don't have quite enough onions, I'm going to skip doing the actual shredding of a real onion, and I'm just going to substitute it with some of this minced onion. I like to put this is just a great thing to have on hand. You can hydrate it with water, but because this is going to be cooking with this meat, and I know some of the grease will start to drain out, that will help to rehydrate this as they are cooking. So I'm probably just going to use maybe like a tablespoon or so of these. And then here's all my potatoes. So I'm just gonna add those in here with my meat mixture. About a tablespoon of these minced onions. And then I'm also gonna add some salt and pepper. The original recipe calls for about 1.5 tablespoons of salt, as well as pepper. Because these are very bland things, right? Just potatoes and ground beef, you definitely are going to want some of these seasonings to make sure that it tastes good. Okay, so now that I have all of those done, I just have some disposable gloves, and I'm going to use these just to protect my hands, because I find the easiest way to mix meat mixtures, especially raw meat mixtures, is just to use your hands. So I'm just going to break up this meat and mix it with these other ingredients just until everything's all nicely combined. This is one of our favorite recipes. They definitely are not like overly healthy because they are made with a lot of cream cheese and butter in the dough. But they are super fun for special occasions, and they freeze really, really well. I've made these for lots of baby showers, bridal showers, and they were even served at my and my husband's wedding. And also at like my high school graduation party. So these are definitely one of our family favorites. I don't make them a ton because they can be a lot of work. They're definitely easier if you have somebody with you, because it's much easier to have one person be like the filler of the dough and one person be the crimper, because sometimes your hands can get messy from getting all of working with the filling, and then your seals might not work as well. Okay. I feel like I've mixed this pretty well, so I'm just going to take off my gloves. Here's what the mixture kind of looks like. So I'm just going to pop this into the fridge while I work on finishing up my dough, and then I will work on making the dough for these pasties, and we'll work on assembling those together. You can tell that the yeast has like kind of started to bloom. It's getting kind of bubbly. So into this I'm going to add my salt and my flour. Like I said, I need 3 teaspoons of salt and 8 cups of flour, and then I'm going to just throw it in my KitchenAid and start mixing it with my dough hook until it all starts to come together. Okay, and then here's my flour. 7. And then I'm going to reserve this 1/8 cup and just add it as this is mixing if I think it needs a little bit more flour. Doughs are always tricky because it's hard to use the exact amount of flour, just because any of your conditions, the heat of your kitchen, the humidity, what the weather's like outside, all of that can affect how your flour absorbs into your wet mixture. So I always do 1 cup shy and then add in more as needed, because if you overflour something, it just makes the dough tougher and not quite as light and fluffy. So I'm going to take this over to the mixer and get that going. So this dough easily came together just with the 7 cups. I didn't have to add any flour. I probably actually could have even added less because this feels kind of like it has definitely on the higher end of flour. So I'm just gonna take this out, transfer it to the bowl that I have greased. And then I'm just going to kind of roll this around so that it can all be covered so none of it dries out. And then I'm just gonna put a towel over it and let it raise for about an hour while I work on some of the other lunch prep for today. Now I'm gonna work on putting together the dough for the mini pasties. Okay, so for the crust ingredients, all you're gonna be doing is you're gonna add your 4 sticks of butter, your 4 blocks of cream cheese, and your 4 cups of flour, as well as a teaspoon of salt. And these definitely, they make a lot. Like I said, this one recipe I would use for parties. And so they make a lot. They make enough to definitely like feed a party. So that's why I really like, that's why I'm not like doubling this recipe or anything, because it makes a lot. You can easily half this and make a more, if you just want to make a smaller amount, or even quarter it, because it should be pretty easy to quarter since there's 4 of everything in this dough mixture. And then whenever we have any extra of the filling, lots of times we'll just fry it up in a frying pan and just eat it with like our lunch for that day or whatever. So these freeze really, really well. You bake them fully, and then you can just keep them in the freezer, and then they just reheat really easily in the oven or the air fryer. You can also do the microwave for the fastest, but you don't get keep the nice like crispy crust that's on them. Another fun fact about these, sorry, you can probably hear airplanes flying. We live not very far away from an airport. But this was this recipe was the first video I ever put on this channel. I was in a video making class in my grad school program on how to make instructional videos. And our final class assignment was to make a video that taught somebody something. So I decided, since this is one of like my favorite recipes, and not that it's complicated, but there are like some steps and some tips and tricks that I thought would be helpful to share. That's what I decided to do my final project on. Now I've definitely come a long way since I made that video. But that video took me such a long time to make. Between learning like how to edit and writing my script. I don't do as much scripting anymore. Depending on the type of video I make, sometimes I just write like notes for what I want to say, but I don't do nearly as much scripting as I did in the beginning. Okay, so I have my butter and cream cheese, so I'm just gonna add my flour, which is 4 cups. And I didn't even like rinse out my bowl at all because I didn't have any dough sticking from my last recipe. And all the ingredients are similar enough that they're not gonna like mess with each other when I'm making this dough. So now I just need my teaspoon of salt. And then again, I'm just gonna throw this over in my mixer and then get ready to start rolling out and making the pasties. Okay, so here's my dough. This is a very sticky, fluffy dough, as you can kind of see. So because it's warm today, I'm going to stick this in the fridge for a little bit so that it can start to firm up a little bit. That just makes it a little bit easier to roll and cut out. And while this is chilling, we're going to work on the chicken pillows. Okay, I'm gonna work on pulling and shredding about 3 cups of rotisserie chicken to work on the chicken pillows. That's gonna be the first thing that I need to do. Again, this is something I like to use gloves for. I just find it's easier for me to grab the chicken. I don't have to wash my hands as much, which dries out my hands really bad. And it's just easier. So this one I've already pulled some of the chicken off of for a recipe that you guys are gonna see in a couple weeks, where I'm working on some different fun summer wrap ideas that are easy for quick dinners, for meal prep, for lunches. So that's what some of this other part of this chicken is for, was from that video. So this is a 4-cup measuring cup. So I'm just going to fill it up 3/4 of the way. So because of the amount I'm just gonna finish shredding this chicken. So I might have a little bit more than 3 cups of chicken, but that'll be fine. The ratios are approximate. The less chicken you have, the more like creamy it will be, because there will be more cream cheese than there'll be more cream cheese and less chicken. So again, with this recipe and all the recipes that I'm doing today, I'll make sure that I link them down in the description box or write them out if there's something that's just like one of my own recipes. So down in the comments, let me know what other kinds of videos you guys are interested in seeing from me. I do like homeschooling content and lots of like kitchen content, recipe ideas, meal plans, grocery hauls, those kinds of things. I also, I haven't done too many videos on it, but I really enjoy like finding really good deals at the grocery store. So if you're interested in maybe some of my tips for like saving money on groceries, I know that's really hard for a lot of people right now. So if you're interested on hearing some of my tips for how I save money at the grocery store and kind of how I manage to have a grocery budget that's around $450 a month, my family of 4, let me know down below and I can work on putting something like that together as well. So I'm just gonna add my chicken in here, and then I'm gonna add my block of cream cheese that's been softened. That'll make it much easier to mix up. Okay, and then for seasonings, I'm just gonna add some onion powder and garlic powder. And then I'm going to use my hand mixer to mix this all together. When I'm doing a bigger batch, I use my KitchenAid, but again, it has a very sticky dough in it right now, so I'm just going to use my hand mixer for this. Okay, so these will need to be cooking at 375. So I'm going to turn the oven on to start preheating for that. And then we're going to work on starting to fill our pillows. For this much chicken, we're probably going to need like 2 to 3 of the cans of them. When I was a kid, my mom would just use like 1 crescent roll triangle for each pillow. But what I like to do, just because I like them a little bit bigger, wish these wouldn't separate like that, is I will roll out the dough and I kind of just cut it into quarters, and then I'll pinch the seams where the triangles are. So kind of like on this one, you can see here's the seam where the 2 triangles are that you would normally pull apart if you're making crescent rolls, but I just pinch that together so that I have like 1/4 of the dough ready to make the chicken pillow. I also kind of press them down a little bit so that they are a little bit thinner. That just helps them cook more evenly and kind of gives a better ratio. With my second roll, my second tube, and then, oh man, these are terrible. They are just falling apart. Oh my goodness. Okay, so here they are all laid out. What we're gonna do is we're gonna put filling on half of them, and then we're going to flip the tops over and crimp them closed. After I have all of them crimped and sealed, then we're gonna dip them in some melted butter and breadcrumbs to make them like a nice crispy topping. Again, and this, if you have any extra of the filling, it's really good as like a chicken salad, or as like a base to a chicken salad if you want to add, you know, your grapes and dill and other seasonings that you want. Or if you have an extra tube of crescent rolls, like I probably have enough right now to make maybe 2 or 3 more. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open up, because I need to use these crescent rolls anyway, because they're getting close to their expiration date, is I'm just going to use the ones that I need to make a couple other pillows, and then any extra dough I'll just make into the regular crescent rolls, and my family will be happy to eat them. So you're just going to fold it over, and then you can crimp it along the edges like this if you want to. I don't always crimp it. Sometimes I just use my fingers to seal it. Okay, so there's all of my chicken pillows all put together. So I'm going to set up my butter and breadcrumb station and show you how I get those dipped and ready to pop in the oven. I'm going to melt a 1/4 cup of butter. That should be plenty for this. I might even need a little bit less, but we'll do that to start with. And then I'm gonna start with like maybe half a cup of breadcrumbs. And then all we're gonna do is just take the chicken pillow, just kind of gonna pop it down in the butter, and then over in the breadcrumbs, and then just set it on the tray. You can also brush the butter on and sprinkle the breadcrumbs. This way, I just like the coverage of this a little bit better. Now we're gonna bake these for about 20 to 25 minutes. If you're planning on just freezing these, you're going to want them to be a little bit underdone. You don't want them to be super crispy. You want them to be cooked and like solid, but you don't want them to be like super golden brown, because when you go to reheat them, especially if you're planning on doing that in the oven or the air fryer, they're going to crisp up and get dark again. Okay, so I'm gonna pop these in the oven, and then we will work on, I'll check our dough for our pizza pockets, but we'll probably go back to working on the pasties. This dough is ready now. It's much firmer. So I'm gonna start by just sprinkling a little bit of flour on my mat. This is a nonstick silicone mat, but I still like to add a little bit of flour. Just makes things a little bit easier to come off. And the reason I use this is because I have beautiful countertops and I love them, but they're textured. And so when I do anything with dough, it gets down in the little divots and it's like impossible to clean up. So I got this for Christmas this last year, I think. And I really, really enjoyed it. It's worked really, really well. Okay, so I'm just pulling all of the dough out. I'm not gonna work with all of it at once, because otherwise it'll start to heat up and then it's just harder to work with. So I'm just gonna put it all together and kind of give it a couple kneads. Knead it for a little bit to make sure everything's all combined really well. And then I'll just work with a little bit of it at a time. And it's a super soft, really light dough, which again makes it really good to taste, but it can make it a little bit tricky to work with. So with my bench scraper, I'm just gonna divide this maybe into fourths. I should have floured that before. And then I'm just gonna pop the 3/4 I'm not working with back in my mixing bowl, and I'll pop this in the fridge so that they stay cold. And I'm just gonna roll this out until we don't want them like paper thin, because then they're gonna be really hard to pull up and work with. But we don't want them too thick that they're gonna take forever to cook, and the filling won't cook. So, okay, and then what we're gonna use is like a 2.5 to 3 inch circle. So this is the one that I have. I just came in like a biscuit cutting set. So I'm just gonna go around, cut out my circles. These are too small. These are super teeny, teeny, tiny. So I'm not going to use this cutter anymore. I'm gonna do one a little bit bigger, just my next size up. So this one's probably like a 4 or 5 inch. Need to adjust that in my recipe. And I'm just gonna roll out a new batch of dough, just so that the filling works a little bit better in them. Again, roll them out about a 1/4 inch thick, 1/4 to 1/8 of an inch. Okay, and again, like before, I'm just gonna put my scraps in the fridge so they can stay cold. Okay, and then I just have a little bit of water right here that I'm gonna use to seal the pasties after I get the meat on them. So again, I'm just doing about a tablespoon of filling on each one. Okay, so I'm just gonna get my finger wet and kind of run it along the outside. Then I'm just gonna fold it in half, push it down, and then I'm going to crimp the edges. And then just plop it down on my cookie sheet. So you can kind of see why I said this is a little bit easier. If you have a friend to help you, you can do an assembly line style and it goes much faster. Now these guys are, because the dough is so fragile, it is a lot more likely that they will split than some of the other doughs that we are using today. But even if they split and kind of don't look super pretty, they still taste delicious. Okay, I'm going to roll out the rest of these and then I'll show you how we get them ready to go in the oven. So before I put them in the oven, they're going to cook at 350 for 30 minutes. I'm going to make an egg wash with 1 egg and 2 tablespoons of milk that I'm just going to brush on the top of these to make sure that they get nice and like a golden crust for when they come out of the oven. Now some of these didn't seal super great because I either overfilled them or my fingers were too wet when I was trying to crimp them and seal them. So some of these are definitely going to explode a little bit. Okay, and while I was working on filling these, the chicken pillows came out of the oven. Just gonna finish doing these, get these in the oven, and then we can start to work on our Hot Pockets. I think because of time, I'm just going to do a double batch of the pizza ones with the pepperoni and the cheese. Okay, so these are going to go in the oven for 30 minutes. I'm gonna put one on my top rack and one on my bottom, and I'm just gonna switch them halfway through so that they can bake evenly. Okay, so here is my dough for the Hot Pockets. I'm just gonna work with this a couple sections at a time. So I'll probably just start with maybe a third of it. And then I'll just keep the rest of it in my bowl covered so it doesn't dry out. And then with this, you don't need to roll anything out. You just kind of make sections, make little dough balls about maybe this size, and then you're going to stretch them out until they are about the size of your hand. So you just kind of stretch them like this, and then you'll put your toppings in them and crimp them. So what we're going to do is, again, just spread them out. I forgot to mention in my first one that you're going to put some pizza sauce in the middle. I'm just going to do maybe 2 or 3 pepperonis, a little bit of cheese, and then you're just going to kind of fold them up. And similar to the pasties and the chicken pillows, you're just going to kind of crimp them around the edges. Again, this dough is sticky enough, like the chicken pillows. You don't need to crimp it if you don't want to, but it should seal pretty easily. This one was a little bit thin in that spot. Oop, so sauce is poking out, but that'll be fine. And then we'll just lay those on a parchment lined cookie sheet, and then we will pop them in the oven. Actually, I'm gonna roll these out a little bit just because I think that'll make it just a little bit quicker than just using my hands. And to kind of create an assembly line, I'm just gonna roll from this batch, I'm just gonna roll out all my circles, and then I can kind of go through and just do all of the toppings all at once instead of making them one at a time. That will kind of make it go a little bit faster. Okay, I'm going to finish doing these and I'll show you how we get them prepped and ready to go in the oven. Okay, I got all these done. I ended up not doing the sauce in them because the sauce was making it really hard for them to seal. So I just did pepperoni and cheese, and then we'll just dip them in sauce when we eat them. Okay, so here's everything that I was able to get made today. Over here we have the chicken pillows. My daughter had half of one for lunch, so we ended up making 11 of those. Here are the mini pasties. Again, like I mentioned earlier, I kind of undercooked them a little bit, so that way when we reheat them, they can get nice and crispy and they won't get overdone. And as you can see, some of mine did not seal very well, but most of them sealed really good. And again, lots of these were also eaten for our lunch today. Then over here are the pizza pockets that I have. Some of them did kind of squirt out a little bit, but for the most part, they all stayed. Their cheese stayed inside pretty well. And then these are the ones that I made with the sauce. You can kind of see that a lot more of them exploded because it was a lot harder to get these sealed. I did sprinkle a little bit of Italian seasoning on these ones, so I could remember that these ones are the ones that had sauce in them. So that's everything that I was able to get made today for some easy freezer lunches that we'll be having on hand for pretty much the rest of the summer. And make sure you check out the description box down below for any of the recipes and instructions that I have for what we made today. And I'll see you guys next week for another video. Thanks for watching. Bye.